Hello and welcome to another episode of Reap the Spoils. My name is Mark Sullivan.
I'm
My
Delaila
name-
Lugo.
Delilah cut me off. My name is Jason Kwasnicki.
I'm pretty sure she's supposed to go before you. That's the order that we designated in episode 1. So,
All
really,
right,
it
I
sounds
fucked
like...
up, okay?
Yeah, it sounds
I'll
like you're
admit
the
it.
one
I'll
that fucked
swallow
up.
my pride.
It's fine. Nobody gives a shit who we are anyway. No worries. They're like, yeah, whatever. Talk about the game.
And, hey, Delilah, what game are we talking about?
Metal Gear Solid 2, Sons of Liberty.
Dun, 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 dun. Dun,
But
dun,
first,
dun.
before we start the show proper,
What?
I have a little eulogy that I want to share with everybody.
Oh, my God.
Yay.
So I gave my Switch to my brother. I'm not a big amiibo guy, but there was one amiibo in particular that I wanted that my mother gave to me for Christmas. It is the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time Link amiibo with him playing his little ocarina.
I remember that
And
amiibo.
unfortunately, when I came home from my vacation
Oh, no.
this weekend, I came home to find next to my PS3 setup in my office, which I currently sit. I came to find this.
Oh, no!
And the worst part is, so my dog, she ate the ocarina. I don't know how she got the ocarina. Well, she also got one of the hands and the head. She actually left the hat and the hair, and the Hylian shield is here.
Because it wasn't as tasty as human flesh.
Fortunately, if I ever get my Switch back to play Breath of the Wild, I hope I never have to play Breath of the Wild again. I can still use it, I think,
Yes, you
to
can.
get the costume.
Well...
But this folks, and I'm a bit sad. This is why I can't be a real nerd and buy statues and such like Mark. That's our segue into one of my favorite games of all time,
I'm sorry about your...
Solitude, Sons of Liberty.
Yes. I'm sorry about your Link amiibo. At least there's one good thing that came out of this, and it's that Delilah and I know what to get you for Christmas this year. Yes, what game wasn't Link in? Link was not in Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty, which is the game that we're talking about today.
Unless you name your main character, Link.
Yeah, yeah, that's a weird thing. We'll talk about that. But first, let me just give the usual intro rundown. This show is a spoiler cast. We do a spoiler cast on a game. The game this time is Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty. If you've not played this game, oh, for the love of God, pause this episode and go fucking play it. Jason said it's one of his favorite games of all time. It's one of my favorite games of all time. Delilah,
You know, I need to replay the rest of them as a 32-year-old woman. I
Okay.
feel like three might be, but memory served me that 2 is my favorite, but now that I replayed it, I'm like, huh. Now I wonder what is actually my favorite.
That's interesting because I actually recently played 1 all the way through because I had seen bits and pieces of it as a kid, but I'd never owned an original PlayStation when it was out, in its actual generation. And with the MGS HD collection, I for the first time was able to play all the way through 1. And actually, having played through 1 now, I actually appreciate MGS2 even more.
Yeah, and that's something I do want to add. This is an interesting caveat for this game that I want to provide. We can't really talk about this game without also talking heavily about Metal Gear Solid 1, for reasons we'll get into. But let it be known that if you're listening to this episode and you haven't played either Metal Gear Solid 1 or Metal Gear Solid 2, you should probably go play both of those just to be safe. We should try to keep it as light as possible on
Like 3 and 4 and the rest of the series.
I completely disregard those. We're not going to talk about anything after 2, but we're not going to talk about anything after 2. But 1, we're probably going to have to... No, we're 100% going to have to dabble in. We'll try to keep it light. We'll only talk about what we have to, if we can help it. But just to be safe, you should go play both of those. I mean, they're both great games. You should play them anyway. But for listening to this episode, go play both of those games. Then come back, press play. We'll pick up right here. Okay, we're going to talk about the game. First, let's do a history lesson.
Brief history.
Yeah, well, brief, cute. There's so much. I found so much stuff on this game. That was actually interesting to talk about. Like, there were games we've done in the past that I was struggling to find interesting facts to discuss about its development. Days Gone was one of those examples. There's no shortage of interesting historical information.
I mean, that's half the story of the game, is like the meta of the game.
Yeah, it's love it. So, the design document for the game, Kojima actually finished in January 1999. I want to say that was only a few months after Metal Gear Solid 1 came out in the United States. I didn't think to look up the date on that to get a time comparison.
No, it was 97, wasn't it?
I believe Metal Gear Solid 1 was North America 1998. I could be wrong, but even
It was 97 or 98, yeah.
Anyway, at the very beginning of 1999, January 1999, the design document for the game was finished. I didn't know this. He originally wanted to call it Metal Gear Solid 3 in Roman numerals.
Yes, I
And it
saw
was
that.
to symbolize the 3 tallest buildings in New York City. That's so bizarre and fascinating to me. He and Kojima, he wanted an emphasis on new gameplay mechanics, not to mention new themes. The primary theme of this game, as has been discussed about pretty much every Metal Gear game, it's just a single word theme, so to speak. The one for this game was meme, which we'll get into. But he also cited wanting to focusing on new mechanics, themes of digitalization, betrayal, blurring reality and fantasy was like the biggest thing that he wanted to try and present in this through this game. He had a production budget of $10 million and used that to really up the engine and the details in the game, more detailed facial expressions, and real-time surroundings, which an example that I think we can talk about right off the top of my head is the ice bucket. Are you guys aware of this?
No.
In the tanker, in like this kitchen area, there's a bucket of ice.
Oh, yes, yes.
And if you knock it over, the ice melts in real time and creates a puddle that you can slip on. Which,
I mean, you can slip on a lot of things. You can slip on bird poop. Yeah.
Yep. It's but I just this example always interests me is there's this bucket of ice that you can knock over and the ice will melt over time and become a puddle that I think an enemy can even slip on it. Now that sounds like child's play, but for early 2000s, that's kind of huge.
Yeah, and this game had a lot of that.
Yes.
A lot of hidden things that you might not encounter if you didn't like futz around.
Yeah. And I even opened up an Easter eggs page on like the Metal Gear wiki. There were a lot more things that I just had no clue were in this game. And we're not going to cover them all because it would easily take 5 hours.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, as everyone who's played it knows, Raiden is the actual primary protagonist that you play as for the majority of the game. And as anyone that knows this game's development and its history, he was kept completely a secret. All footage of the game shown before release had Snake. Even sections of the game that had Raiden in them, he was swapped out for Snake. So everyone went into this game believing you played as Snake the entire time.
After the initial release trailer, I remember they when the second time they showed gameplay footage, it was actually that initial fight you have with Fortune in the entry point. But they literally swapped in the Raiden model for the Snake model. But it's literally the same exact fight.
Yeah, he was just it's like gaming's greatest kept secret, at least for the time. Um, I found this out too, which I was mentioning it to you guys before we like a couple weeks ago. But the idea for Raiden. So we were discussing, Jason, in the chat, that it was always going to be a different protagonist because Kojima wanted to have a different character so that the player could see Snake through someone else's eyes. And he also didn't want to force this veteran character to have to go through a tutorial again for the player to learn how to play the fucking game. So he was always going to have a different protagonist. And the idea for Raiden actually stemmed from him overhearing two female debuggers talk about how the game didn't appeal to them because it was a bunch of old men. So Raiden was created to appeal to women.
That's weird.
Why? What do you think of Raiden, Delilah?
Does Raiden not appeal to you?
No, I mean, now to me he's a child, but you know, besides that, he looks like a very feminine. Like he's androgynous, actually.
Yes,
He has
yes.
the long hair, thin, you know.
Yeah, I don't like his bangs. His bangs really bother me.
Yeah.
Like the long hair is fine, just the bangs are so weird to me. The plot went.
Before you dive deep.
Go ahead.
So this is not something that I ever made note of when I first played the game a while back. In the beginning of the game, when you start it up, you see Snake's image as like the game cover, and then when you beat the game, they show Raiden's image. Was that
Yes.
just the HD remaster, or did they do that in the old
I don't
game?
remember.
I think that was done in the PS2 version as well.
Okay.
Because there's also like a hidden, not even hidden, and it's so silly. There's a thing where you can press, I want to say it's L2 or R2, and you'll see the screen flash and you'll hear a thunder strike. Or a thunder sound. It's supposed to be lightning, Raiden meaning lightning. I don't know, something cheesy like that. I'm pretty sure that was still there in the PS2 version. I would assume that Raiden would still be in the title screen after finishing the game. I'm not 100% sure either, but I do believe it was there.
Either way, super cool. I love that.
Yeah. So the plot underwent a numerous amount of changes. The game
It must have sucked to be those writers on this
right?
game.
Well, right. The plot originally took place in Iraq, involving stopping nuclear weapons and a new Metal Gear, of course. That changed because there was a lot of real life politics involving the country of Iraq around the late 90s, early 2000s.
Yo, if Saddam Hussein had been in Sons of Liberty.
Yeah.
What if Saddam Hussein had been a boss in Sons of Liberty?
Oh my gosh.
Instead of Fat Man, it's Saddam Hussein rolling around in rollerblades.
So because of that, the game underwent many plot changes, and we got something a lot more local, off the coast of NYC. And even then, the ending of the game was not without change, because shortly before this game was scheduled to release, September 11th happened in 2001. So they quickly proceeded to alter the ending, which takes place on top of Federal Hall.
Yeah, Federal Hall.
The Arsenal gear, I believe, was supposed to crash through some buildings, which they changed. They removed any sighting or mention of the Twin Towers from the game. Basically, any acts of destroying major historical architecture was completely removed from the ending. You don't even see Arsenal crash into the city, which it somehow does. We just don't see it because they removed it. They didn't want that to be there. And also another thing that I found really interesting. Another change that I think I knew at one point and forgot. They changed Raiden's Japanese lettering It used to be written in katakana, which is the Japanese alphabet used for spelling out and pronouncing foreign words. They changed it to kanji because the katakana writing for Raiden was too close to Bin Laden.
Mm, that's
It
crazy.
must have really sucked to be these writers in this
Yes. So that's another small change that they decided to make as a result of the increasingly bad political climate and the 9/11 attacks.
At least it wasn't really on the nose, like just putting Spider-Man in front of a giant American flag at the end of your movie. Like,
Oh, and that's another thing. They removed. There were supposed to be an American flag that fell on Solidus after the final boss. That was also removed. They removed a lot of imagery of American flags and stuff like that. That was another thing that was changed. I forgot to mention. In spite of
which I
all
find
that,
kind of interesting
yeah, I don't know. I guess
because I feel, okay, well, thematically well, I we'll get to that later on.
yeah. So, in spite of all that, the game did finally release on November 13th, 2001. Substance came out roughly a year later. This game has been kind of re-released to hell, so I didn't want to put all of the release dates in our notes. But Substance came out roughly a year later, which added additional content and I think some small tweaks to the main scenarios that you play through. And the game was re-released in HD for PS3 and Xbox 360 in 2011, and also Vita, I think, in 2012. So
I don't remember when it was on Vita, but yeah, sounds
20,
about right.
2012, yeah, something like that. So yeah, that's our brief history lesson of Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty. Let's get into it. So, the game opens up with the usual.
You're on the GW bridge.
Yeah, the GW bridge. Yep. Some
Snake
little
is somehow smoking a cigarette in the rain.
in the torrential downpour that just happened in New York City, and he's wearing a fucking poncho, having a cig, goes for a run, never clips the bungee cord to the bridge.
Yes, I noticed that this time I played. It's the first time I ever noticed that.
Pretty sure that bothered me the first time I played through the game, but I just didn't. It's Metal Gear. Who cares?
Yeah, Snake.
But he goes bungee jumping, lands on the tanker. We see our boys back, and then 10 minutes of conversations with Otacon. And they had an original mission that got changed mid cutscene because terrorists. Yeah, like, don't have to bog down with the details. What did we think of the tanker chapter? Was it a good intro?
Yes.
Yes.
I think so.
It's a good intro.
Although playing back now, and I really didn't pick up on a lot of this as a kid. The tanker chapter kind of spoils like half the story, or at least it spoils Otacon, Ocelot.
Ocelot.
Yeah, like if you don't understand what's going on with Ocelot from the tanker chapter, like I don't understand, or I don't think you'll understand anything that's going to happen in this game.
Yeah, and I will add that does sort of get retconned later, but we won't talk about how or why.
Right.
What I find so odd about that, so as we come to find out, what Jason's referring to is that Liquid, Snake's brother, has possessed Ocelot through his arm.
Through his arm, which, as far as you know, if you're going back to when this game was released, as far as you know, Ocelot still only had one arm because it had, he had lost it in Metal Gear Solid 1.
Yeah, it got chopped off.
So the first time you see him with two arms, you have no idea what the fuck's going on.
Well, yeah.
There's no like there's really no explanation for his arm until later in the game when you're overhearing Ocelot talk with the main quote unquote antagonist.
Yeah. But like, I don't know. How do you? Never mind. I'm about to ask the logistics of how they grafted another man's arm to Ocelot, and it just functions perfectly fine. But I feel like the bigger question is how the fuck is Liquid possessing him through a fucking
Through his
arm?
arm.
You know, whatever.
Well, we find out in chapter 4.
The thing that bothers me the most is that Liquid's voice comes out after he goes through his little pain process.
Hello, brother.
It's so off-putting. It was off-putting then. It's off-putting now. It's so bizarre, but
and it's not really relevant for like the rest of the game.
I mean, it does come back. We'll circle back to
It
that.
does.
But
No, it does in ways, but like still, that was totally unnecessary.
it's so
And really,
having his voice, yes, is totally unnecessary. I guess it's just
Liquid in general was totally unnecessary. Like
I mean,
if you
I
think
guess
if you think about the totality of the timeline of, and I'm not going to spoil anything for later Metal Gears, but I'm just saying
he's whipping out the big words. He whipped out the word totality.
But if you think of the overarching narrative, and if you think about, Ocelot's place in this particular story, Liquid could have just died and won and been gone.
I agree. I do agree with that, but
it almost made it worse. Like it made, and for those who are going on to play 4, you'll understand what I mean when I say it made things worse. Keeping Liquid around.
You have to make things worse to make things better, right? If that's to say things got better at some point, maybe.
I feel like they just did that so that the player can question, like, is Ocelot like still bad? Like that this like theme of betrayal that's consistent throughout Metal Gear Solid 2. But
I agree, but to an even further extent, I think they did it just to confuse the fuck out of everyone.
Yeah,
that
because
too.
Yeah,
and they're like at that point in the game, they're already throwing around shit that hasn't been mentioned previously at all in the Metal Gear saga. So like Ocelot just says, referring to Metal Gear Ray, which is your mission in the tanker, is to find evidence of Metal Gear Ray. As now you are no longer working for the government or the military, you're working with Ocelot as part of a NGO. Otacon. I just say I keep mixing up Ocelot and Otacon. I used to be an anime otaku.
It's just like one of my Japanese animes. But
but I just love, and we'll get to it later. I love the scene with Otacon. They're just walking dramatically, and Otacon just has a fucking parrot or a parakeet or whatever on his shoulder, like.
Yeah.
But no, back to what I was saying. Even from that early chapter, while you're trying to get evidence of Metal Gear Ray to get it out to the news, so that the people know what the government's really doing. That's kind of what Snake and Otacon are trying to do after Shadow Moses and the incident in Metal Gear 1, or Metal Gear Solid 1, sorry.
Yes, Metal Gear 1 is a different game.
Yeah, they're totally different games. Ocelot just comes and says, I am reclaiming it for the Patriots. And all of a sudden, this random Marine officer, who you have at that point no idea who he is, it's like, and you would think, like, later on, you find out who the Patriots are. They're this ultra super secret organization that runs the world. How the fuck does, like, some random ass Marine colonel know who the fuck this is?
It's
when,
funny
like,
because
not even like secretaries in the White House know.
It's funny because we do kind of get an explanation. Again, we get an explanation for that in a later game. But the funny thing is, yeah, he says the la 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 la, and we have absolutely we never get any context or explanation behind that until Metal Gear Solid 4, 7 years later.
Yeah.
So,
and honestly,
the series just went on this long, just hearing the la 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 and having no fucking idea what the fuck that means.
As funny as that is, I thought that when I was a kid, I actually thought that was really cool, just the mystery of it. Because it's like, oh, these high government guys, they only refer to it by, like, this fucking weird-ass nickname. Yeah, like... No, but it does. The mystery is what made the Patriots what they were in the earlier games.
I agree. I will agree with you.
But let's move on.
Yes, let's move on. So we liked the tanker chapter. Is a good intro.
Yeah,
Good
it's basically a
tutorial.
miniature. It's basically a miniature version of what will be the larger game.
Yeah, and we meet several key players. We meet Olga, um, who does come back later. She's actually your first boss fight.
Hmm.
Uh,
I do not want to leave the Union.
yup. But yeah, Ocelot steals Ray. Tanker, crumbles, and what? Snake just died.
Yeah.
But we're supposed to play as him for like the rest of the game. We saw other parts of the game that with Snake in them that no, he can't be dead. Right?
Right.
Right.
What just happened? So then we go to the plant chapter. Oh, before we move on, the tanker chapter, besides this being a good tutorial, was a really good showcase for a lot of those new mechanics that this game brought. I feel like we should
Exactly.
talk
God.
about those now before we really get into the meat and potatoes.
And a big one being first person, which
Yeah.
one of my bugaboos going back and playing MGS1
Oh,
after having played all the other games
you
is
didn't you didn't go back and play the superior version, Twin Snakes?
well, I should say the GameCube that I had is still in my parents' house.
Oh, I
My
mean,
sister refuses to give it up because there was one game on the GameCube she plays all the time. It's like Pikmin, or I don't know.
oh, well, yeah, Pikmin was on the GameCube, yes. Um, I was being facetious though, because Twin Snakes is not the superior version of
I thought it was.
No, because they added like a bunch of weird, stupid shit that Snake does. That's just like it makes him out to be like some crazy superhero, and he's not.
Yeah, I thought the whole point of Metal Gear Solid 1 was he was just a soldier, yeah.
Yeah, he like backflips over a fucking rocket in Twin Snakes. It's fucking nonsense. Uh, but yeah, they added, and it should be noted, Twin Snakes is a remake of of Metal Gear Solid 1 using Metal Gear Solid 2's assets and engine. So,
And has voice acting and everything.
well, so did the original, but it did have new voice acting,
Yeah, yeah.
newly recorded. But anyway, yes, first person aiming was a huge thing. Able to the ability to look in 3D environments, up, down, left, right, through a first person view. Big stuff. And also you had to be sneakier in this game. They really upped the amount of
The
sneak
AI.
you have to be. Yeah, the AI. That's a better way of putting it than
Right.
upping the sneak.
And the AI was unusually good for a game of that time.
Yeah.
Like
Yes.
like the few times playing through this where I got caught, which was usually frustratingly because I couldn't. One of the things was I was still trying to rely on the Soliton radar, the radar mechanic, where you can see, the map above and all the dots moving, showing where guys are. Um, Even with that, where you can see the dots moving around, you couldn't always tell how far away. Were you far away enough that they couldn't
Right.
see you? What direction were they looking in? All that stuff. Um, and they would even switch up their paths. Sometimes guards would fall asleep. Some guards would look around, and if they thought no one was looking, at least pee over the sides of railings. You can walk under and slip on their pee, and they might hear you and come down to look. Interesting stuff for the time.
Quick question: what difficulty did you guys play on?
I just did
Normal.
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 Yeah.
Cool. So we're all on the same page. All right. Yeah. I was playing on normal, and looking at the Soliton radar, you're not in that cone, but they can still see a good range, and even just out of the very edge of that cone of vision that they have, like you can get spotted really easily. The
Yes.
AI was vastly improved, and really impressive for the time.
Yeah, and I haven't played Metal Gear Solid 1 over again, but I don't remember there being that much AI that come at you once you're caught. Like, I feel like you're borderline dead in Metal Gear Solid 2.
Yeah, because what they really did with Metal Gear Solid 2 was, aside from an alert and an evasion phase, if you do manage to sneak away and hide, they have a caution phase where a couple guards will linger back and still patrol with the guards that are usually in the rooms.
Right.
They've really upped the security function of the AI in this game.
And they check, the lockers. They go around, check everywhere.
They'll do a clearing of each room, go in, check every corner. You still have your boxes, but they'll check the boxes. And yeah, the AI was really good in this game. Other things that they added, like part of the whole having to be sneakier, having to up the sneak, if you will. There's shadows and lighting effects. Lighting will affect, and especially in certain bosses. Like there's a boss, there's a part in Olga's fight where she'll move a light to shine in your eyes,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to shoot the light out so you can actually see what the fuck you're doing.
I completely forgot you could do that. So I literally I literally beat her with the light in my face. I just kept shooting where I knew she was,
And
Yeah.
until it hit her.
There's also a boss later in the game where the lights can actually freeze you in your tracks, and the way around that is to shoot them out beforehand.
Mm.
Yeah, so the neat little things in the environment. You can peek around corners. You can hide bodies in lockers that you either put to sleep, knock out, kill. All the real-time stuff, and something that sticks with the series forever and becomes kind of a main focus, especially if you go for the higher ranks that you can get. Being non-lethal about the entire playthrough.
Yes.
You're given a tranquilizer gun. You're even given a tranquilizing sniper rifle at some point. And you can play through the game without killing a single person. Even the bosses. They still die, like, in canon, they still die somehow. I guess they overdose on sleeping drugs.
You just can't use the weapon that's red, basically, in your items.
So,
It took me a while to readjust to this kind of first-person view because you had to press the square button. And after playing years of modern games, it was just like really hard for me to readjust. So the tanker episode like really helped me out a lot.
yeah.
But then when you start playing as Raiden and you don't have the silencer, I was like, fuck, God.
And you also had to readjust to fixed cameras, which, seem kind of quaint and outdated these days. But in a way, I almost appreciated it for being like a big fan of stealth games. On one hand, yes, it's annoying that sometimes you can get unfairly caught due to the fixed camera. But on the other hand, the increased difficulty made it feel like I was actually playing a game. When I look back, as much fun as I had with the Phantom Pain, Metal Gear Solid 5, as much fun as I had with the mechanics of that game and as good as it felt to play, I felt like this game was so much more of a challenge and as a result, so much more fun.
Oh, absolutely more of a challenge. I mean, the AI are still smart in Metal Gear 5. Like that. I feel like Metal Gear series has the smartest AI when it comes to stealth. And that carried over in Metal Gear Solid 5, but there was an open world, so you could kind of like get different angles. Whereas here, it's like if you get caught, like you have like
and you were
limited
Superman.
mobility.
And you were Superman and you could slow down time, whereas here, you still have like opportunities here. So like if a guard sees you and he goes to call it in, if you're fast enough and good enough with that first person camera, and I did it multiple times, you can shoot the radio out of their hand or put them to sleep before they talk. Now they'll still send guards down to check out the situation, but like you won't go into alert phase.
Yeah. Was this the case in Metal Gear Solid 1 where if you shoot different parts of the body, like the chest and the head, will put them to sleep faster?
There was no first person.
Well,
No.
right. I'm sorry. Like just so yeah, it was just basically shooting them and that's it.
Yeah,
like you didn't.
You just
Yeah.
aim and shoot. But there's no like specific aiming. There's no body parts or anything. That was another big thing. Is certain body parts really played into the game. I don't know if you guys messed around with holding up guards for dog tags or anything. But
Oh yeah, shake them up.
yeah,
Yeah.
but there are guards that'll be like all macho man, like, yeah, you're not doing shit. What are you gonna do? Shoot me? And then you hold him up with the trank gun. It's like, yeah, motherfucker, I'm gonna shoot you. Whip out the SOCOM, shoot him in the kneecap, and he's like, ow, all right, here. Or what I always like to do is I like to shoot right next to his head, so the bullet goes past his head, and then he gets real scared that I'm gonna kill him.
You got to keep what you really got to do is keep banging on the walls and making the guards run all over the place, and eventually they just start shouting like, "Who is doing this?"
It's really like yeah, and that's another beautiful thing about this game is like, for that time, and what they give you, like it's a nice little fun little sandbox with a lot of the shit you can do. Like, you can hang off of railings and just like sneak around that way. You can hide in lockers, knock on shit. No one cares. The guards get all confused, and they'll and the AI is so advanced that for the time, it's just, there's so much shit you can do.
They'll even point out there are multiple boxes in this game that you can hide under, and if you use the wrong box in the wrong area, the guards will notice, and they'll actually come and kick you out of the box. Yeah. So
it's great. I love this game. All right.
So do I.
So yeah, moving on. Plant chapter. Get this weird blonde-haired boy going for a swim, happens upon a hole in the fence, goes into this plant, and he's being spoken to by a familiar voice.
Colonel Campbell.
Except, and I don't know if you guys noticed this, I'm sure you did, but he's never called Colonel Campbell. He's only ever called the Colonel. And it's a face we recognize. It's a name we recognize, but that's Campbell, right? Like, isn't that Campbell?
Or is it?
Dun, dun, dun. All right. So, and he's calling this dude Snake. We all just saw Snake die. And this isn't David Hayter. Who the fuck? So, and not to mention, after the hole in the fence meant there was another intruder, and when you turn that corner after getting into what even was that? Like it was a dock.
Yeah, it was like a docking bay with a little submarine, and there was an elevator going up.
Yeah,
and it was quite literally just like the beginning of Metal Gear Solid 1.
Yeah,
where
even
you get out of the water into Shadow Moses, and there's an elevator going up. And as soon as you turn the corner to the room with the elevator,
you see that familiar ass.
Yeah, you see some familiar looking legs, good looking booty, and you see two unconscious dudes on the floor. As he's going up the elevator.
Yep, sure do. And then you go and activate the node, which is what Jason was talking about earlier by alluding to naming yourself Link. And this is a really odd thing that only makes sense at the very end of the game.
Right.
And it's like one of those things that you have to do ostensibly in every single area you go to in the plant chapter. And you're just like, why the fuck am I doing this? Why is this necessary? And then you get to that final cutscene at the end where it plays in. You're like, you have that aha moment.
Gameplay-wise, it's also necessary just because this is the method by which you get the map for the Soliton radar for each area that you go into.
Yeah. Which I guess is fine.
Yeah, it's
like
kind of unnecessary, but
yeah, and I don't know. I guess it's fine. It's not something I want to complain about too much, so I'm not going to bother.
Yeah, it wasn't like, again, it just, for me, it added to the difficulty, and the game was already more difficult than most games that come out these years.
Yeah.
So, making it more difficult just made it more enjoyable for me.
And so yeah, the plant chapter, we meet a bunch of wacky and interesting people.
So after the Colonel, you're introduced to the analyst of the mission, Rosemary.
Oh, we're gonna talk about Rosemary right now. All right, here we fucking go. What do you guys think of Rosemary?
like towards it, like at the end,
I don't
or
care.
like.
I don't give like it's a spoiler cast. Like we can jump around, do whatever the fuck we want. What do you
Well,
guys think of Rosemary?
I thought it just made sense because in the beginning, I wanted to really pay attention to the dialogue between Rosemary um and Raiden throughout this game because I never really did. I kind of skipped over it when I was a kid
I
playing the
think you
game.
mean I think you mean Jack.
Yeah. Well, she doesn't start saying she says Raiden at first if I remember
Yo,
correctly.
because
But
all right, the Colonel says, "Hey, all right, you're on this mission, but can you just do me one favor?" And she's like, "Sure." She's like, "Call him Raiden." She's like, "Okay,
yeah,
Raiden." And then every time you call her after that,
it's Jack.
Jack. It's like,
Yeah.
fucking listen.
I will say overall, I did prefer oh God,
Mei Ling.
what was her name? Mei Ling, yeah, sorry. Uh, Mei Ling was kind of more overall humorous.
Well, this
But
is the fun thing that Metal Gear Solid likes to do, and they did it in 1, 2, and 3, as far as I can remember, where your save person, right after you save the game, will then proceed to give you a long lecture about something. And Mei
yeah,
Ling used to do it about. She used to just do it about lots of proverbs, and she used to give you advice and stuff, and it was like always
right.
interesting stuff. Metal Gear Solid 3 uh, was your save person. I'll just keep it as generic as possible. Talked to you about movies, classic films, and that's
Well,
really
well,
fascinating.
well, it was interesting, but the more important thing I think is that throughout the game they hint at a deeper backstory to Raiden. And as the
Yes,
game goes on, as the game goes on, every time you save, it gets a little deeper and deeper.
this is
Like it starts
true.
off simple enough, like talking about the first day they met, and as Mark was just saying,
Hey guys,
at
do,
that night,
do you know
uh,
what day tomorrow is?
yeah, it's the first day we met Jack. Um, no, on their first date, the first night they met, they watched King Kong at least 9 times. Yes, I'm sure, Ryan, you were watching King Kong 9 times in a row. Like, but
It's a good movie, Jason. If you're not watching it 9 times in a row, you're not really watching it.
but as it goes on, things get deeper, more interesting, a bit more personal between them.
There
You
was
know,
nothing in your room,
yeah,
Jack.
yeah, exactly.
I see. That's what
Jack
solidifies it for
refused to
me.
sleep with her, and he revealed he's terrified of the night. His nightmares, and then apparently she went into his personal room one time, and there was nothing in there. There was nothing in your room, Jack.
White walls,
And he got
an empty
violent with
desk.
her, and it actually does result. And we'll get to this later with some of the big reveals at the end. It does help um, add a little bit to that twist at the end. It kind of helps foreshadow it a bit, which is, to the credit of the writers. Even if I think that should have been done, not necessarily, from your save screen.
I was just confused the whole time. I was like, why her?
Well, that's a whole nother thing. Like, and that goes back to what Mark was saying about nobody ever says Colonel Campbell. They just say Colonel. Everything's foreshadowing, and like having played the game and going back and playing it again, like I said with the tanker chapter, you can pretty easily see where everything's going in retrospect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, what I was alluding to about interesting characters was not Rosemary. I was talking about our namesake.
Yes.
This
Dead
is
Cell.
this is Dead Cell Media. Fun fact: we named ourselves Dead Cell Media, uh, because we're 3 people, and Dead Cell in Metal Gear Solid 2 is technically 3 people. And
Yeah.
there's a girl and 2 guys, so we went with Dead Cell Media. Also, it comes off the tongue. It's pretty cool. We like Metal Gear, so we went with that.
Come join the party.
That was way too good of an impression. I'm
That's why I'm fat man.
I'm scared and impressed. I can't do a good Romanian accent. I'm sorry. Um.
What do you
Yeah.
want, my queen?
All right. Stop.
I always found that weird. They referred to each other as queen and king. Or actually, no, they referred to Solid as king. But
They yeah.
anyway.
Okay. So, yeah, Dead Cell. These are our peeps, man.
And one of the things to notice here are the parallels between the Shadow Moses,
Yeah,
the
pretty
that
much.
you go through
Pretty
in
much.
Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2.
So maybe that's something we should talk about before we get on to all the other things. Is the reason I say you should really play Metal Gear Solid 1 in addition to Metal Gear Solid 2 if you're listening to this podcast. So if again, this is your last chance. Stop. Press pause. Go away. Play those games. Come back. Press play. Okay, now. We find out momentarily there's this S3 plan that's thrown around. The idea of this S3 plan, S3. It stands for Solid Snake Simulation. And that's when it unravels that Dead Cell, the appearance of a cyborg ninja, what else? The presence of a person with the last name Emmerich. Could come up with a whole bunch of different scenarios, examples, but it all harkens back to things that happened at Shadow Moses.
A black dude being the first one to die.
Oh my god.
Damn. So yeah, all these different examples, they all harken back to Shadow Moses, to Metal Gear Solid 1. And the whole idea behind that is Big Shell, the whole thing, the tanker sinking, and the Big Shell's presence, and someone infiltrating. All the little references that you see sprinkled throughout, they're not just coincidence. The whole elevator thing that you mentioned, Jason, not a coincidence.
I know, that's why I mentioned it.
Is all I know. I know. It was all orchestrated to basically copy Shadow Moses to create another Solid Snake. Is basically the whole S3 plan was the idea that they could manufacture Solid Snakes.
Or is it?
But we'll get to that.
To that.
Yes, we have to talk
That's a whole
about
nother apple.
the first S3 plan. The S3 plan that's a part of the real S3 plan.
So Dead Cell is basically,
Foxhound.
To us at first it kind of just looks like, oh, this is just Foxhound 2.0. That's literally what it is supposed to be in the context of the story, is presenting the trainee, as it were, with
a group of crazies.
Crazies / supernatural bosses, basically, to make your way through. Featuring Vamp, Fortune, and Fat Man, who you fight in the complete opposite order I just introduced them in.
So, what do we think of Dead Cell? I mean, clearly we like them.
Yeah, they're
Yes.
really cool. I really like how they introduce each of these characters. Specifically Vamp, I felt like that was extremely dark when you were like walking through the hallways and you just see like blood splattered all over the place, and then he just like shows up.
Again, another reference to Shadow
that first
Moses.
intro,
Yes.
where you also meet Iroquois Pliskin.
Who is definitely and totally not Solid Snake.
No.
He
No
died
way.
on that tanker 2 years ago.
That ain't no Navy man.
Yeah.
The introduction to Vamp is fucking awesome, and he is the first one that you actually see in the game. I mean, you don't fight him first, but it's just a cutscene you see shortly after you enter the tanker complex. I'm sorry, not the tanker, the plant complex.
The name's a little on the nose.
Yeah, a little, just a bit. Then you have Fortune, who can't be hit by any bullets and there's this pretty awesome scene where these Navy SEALs try to shoot some grenades at her, and
A dud?
yeah, no, he doesn't ask, he just goes, "A dud,"
Oh.
and then they all, for some reason, they run at her as if that's going to make anything any better. And she got a giant ass rail gun, which is fucking awesome.
Yeah.
Then you got Fat Man, the king of explosives, and he is literally a fat man
Probably
who
the
runs around or rolls around, I should say, on rollerblades and shoots at you while drinking a cocktail and planting
my
bombs.
favorite boss fight in
I
this game.
honestly, this will be controversial probably, but I honestly like Dead Cell better than Foxhound.
That's fine.
Honestly, because when it comes to Foxhound, the only one I really liked was Sniper Wolf. In terms of, I always thought Psycho Mantis was, the fight itself wasn't overrated. It was awesome for the time.
Yeah.
But I feel like the only thing cool about Psycho Mantis was the mechanics of the fight.
Not
Like, I
even the mechanics of the fight, just what they managed to even just to pull off in the cutscene with him, which is really cheesy, but for the time, it could freak you the hell out. Like, oh, I'm gonna
Right.
read your mind. Oh, you like to play Castlevania, and then you're like, I do. How the fuck does he know that?
Right.
And then the introduction of the DualShock at the time, and I'm gonna make a controller move, put it on the floor. Bzzz, see what I did there? It's like, it's so goofy and so campy. That's kind of what makes Psycho Mantis, and the mechanics of the fight as well. But a lot of Foxhound was.
And then, of course, there's the other one who is completely forgettable. I forget his name all the time. The guy with the
Revolver Ocelot.
no, not Ocelot. You can never forget Ocelot's the best character
Raven.
in Vulcan Raven. Yeah,
Which
you can never forget Ocelot. He's the fucking best character in the series. Like,
another fun bit about Vulcan Raven was the little action figure on the tanker.
oh yeah, we forgot to mention that.
The
Yeah.
light illuminating behind it, and there's
Snake's
a little
just
cutscene. He goes up the
Vulcan Raven.
it's so goofy, but yeah,
That's the best part of the series.
Vulcan Raven's pretty forgettable. Decoy Octopus is we never even see technically. No, well,
He just dies.
we do. We just don't know that it's him.
Yeah.
And yeah, Revolver Ocelot, who might as well not even be a member of Foxhound because he's just
Decoy Octopus. You might know me by another name, Decoy Octopus. Like, what the fuck?
So. Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree. I feel that Dead Cell is overall has more memorable members of its crew. Like Psycho Mantis is like super memorable. Sniper Wolf is super memorable. And I don't even want to count Ocelot in that crew, but while
Ocelot's his own guy, yeah.
while Dead Cell is sort of a each individual is less memorable than those two I just mentioned. They're more memorable. The whole crew is more memorable overall. I would say.
Wait, you're saying Foxhound is more memorable?
No, I'm saying Dead Cell as a whole is more memorable.
I also feel like Dead Cell just has, each of the characters have, besides Vamp, so really only two of them, have more integrated stories into the rest of the game.
Yes.
Which gave you a bit more grounding for the fights.
For sure. Like Fat Man being the mentee of Peter Stillman, the bomb expert that happens to be there on the big shell.
He comes in with the Navy SEALs. By the way, we should probably give some context as to why you're going onto the plant. Dead Cell, at least as you are told by the colonel, as you swim into the plant, is holding the president of the United States hostage at this plant.
Are you a bad enough dude to save the president?
Right. He's holding the president hostage, and they're holding them there for like a ransom of $3 billion. And apparently, if the plant blows up, all the chemicals and gas will spill and destroy the entire eastern seaboard. And, it just so happens that this plant was erected over the wreckage of the tanker that sapped in the previous chapter that you played.
Well, it was put there because of the tanker.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like it is a cleanup plant.
Yes.
To cover up the environmental damage from the tanker.
It's supposed to be a symbol of environmental protection, or is it?
Da, da, da. But yes. So we should also mention at this point. So I think I don't know, Delaila, did you get in your last thoughts on Dead Cell versus Fox?
Delaila, I feel like we're talking too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, you guys, I think, have a better understanding of this game than I ever could, than most people ever could, because you've played all of them, I think, fairly recently, and you played all of them. I haven't. So
that's fine, because we don't want
even after beating this game, I was still confused
well, that's
about
still
a lot.
good. That's still good because it's basically you get the opinion of a Metal Gear head or a Geary, as some call us.
No, stop.
And somebody who is more of a casual fan.
Yes.
Are you calling me a casual fan?
I was just saying Delaila likes the games casually.
I just really wanted to bust your balls there. That was fun. So, Delaila, what you're really telling me is that we have to keep doing episodes of this on Metal Gear games.
Yeah, I actually would like that, but not like back to back.
No, we'll take a break. We'll go like 50 episodes before we do the next Metal Gear.
The thing that's so confusing about this game is there's so many like different themes that come up, and I feel like with Fat Man specifically, this theme that comes up of like passing on the torch, like passing your legacy on to like the next generation or whatever, kind of like I think like a Snake says this as the end. He has like this speech about like how you should pass your legacy on, and Raiden's like he wants a kid to be able to do that and whatever. And Fat Man was basically he basically got passed on information of how to be a master demolitionist, and that like bit everyone in the ass.
Yeah, Peter Stillman basically throughout one of the early segments of the plant chapter, you're basically running around to different segments, deactivating bombs that Fat Man has planted, apparently to take down the complex. Except Peter Stillman happens to know they're not in the greatest places to take down the complex, and it turns out it's a trap because taking them all out activates the two big ones, and of course Stillman is killed. And that's when you have to go confront the Fat Man.
Yup, the Fat Man. So yeah, he was a fun boss. We could just talk about the boss battles against all of them real quick before we move on from Dead Cell. He's a fun boss because he's rollerblading around. You got to try and either shoot him down and trank him, or shoot him down and shoot him down. And he's rollerblading around, planting bombs that you got to cool down on the fly. Lots of quick thinking there.
And quick item changes.
Which was a lot of fun when playing on Vita, given the way the control scheme works.
Right.
You gotta use the touchscreen a lot, and
going in and out of that first person.
I mean, that part wasn't too bad, but yeah, I think you guys both played the HD port on PS3. I played the HD port on Vita because I've never played through it on Vita.
And I think one of the nice things was that on the I remember back in the day, it wasn't like X to select or anything. It was always circle.
I think that was with MGS1 for sure, but I think
I don't know. I'm pretty sure it was MGS2 as well.
Maybe.
All I know is that in the HD version, the collection for PS3, it's either switched or maybe it's the same it was, but that like made things significantly easier for me.
Yeah, that's an old Japanese thing. And it makes more sense. Like the X you would think would be the cancel button.
Cancel,
it's an
yeah.
X, and circle would be the confirm button. It's a thing we see in a lot of Japanese games from early on. But anyway, so yeah, I think we all like the Fat Man fight. What about that Fortune fight? If we can call it that.
It's not even a fight.
Yeah, because you can't do anything to her, so you're basically just surviving until the elevator comes.
Yeah, hiding behind boxes.
I don't know. I feel like of all the bosses, like that's the only one that's kind of a disappointment.
Yeah. Definitely.
Because it's just doing cartwheels in the back row.
Yeah, that's another thing about Raiden I love. I love his cartwheels.
Yeah.
There's no rolling.
Doing those cartwheels. He's got those locks waving in the wind.
Even I didn't try it this time around, and I don't remember. But even when he's like butt naked towards the end, he still does the cartwheels.
Oh, he can still do the cartwheels. He just always has his hands
on his crotch. Yeah, you can't
covering the juicy bits.
First person. You can't do first person or anything because
you kind of don't have anything to aim in first person with.
Right.
Well, you can still do first person normally in the game, but the game won't let you at that point do anything that would take his hands off his crotch. It's pretty funny.
Well, but you don't really have anything that you can use to begin with. Like, you're completely disarmed.
Right.
So it's
oh, that's right. You have to do the cartwheels because that's the only way you can knock people out.
I mean, either that or you just stealth.
Yeah, if you're good at the game, Jason, you just sneak around.
Well, maybe I just want to do some cartwheels.
I loved cartwilling into guys, though, and they're like, ah!
Yeah. He starts to call someone, you just cartwheel into him, and he gets knocked over. If you're lucky, you could, like, knock him off the railing or something.
Yeah.
But, yeah, Fortune's, like, the one boss I would say was pretty disappointing. The vamp fight, though...
It was outrageous. You freaking see him dancing on water, looking like he's dancing flamenco or some shit.
Well, that's the thing. A fun fact, I don't know if you guys are aware, he was modeled after a famous flamenco dancer.
Really?
Like even his likeness. Yeah, I don't have the name handy. Sorry.
That's so random.
Yes,
wow.
Yeah. He was modeled after a famous flamenco dancer. I think even the likeness and everything.
But Vamp. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say dancing flamenco is one thing, but to do what he did on top of water, I was just like, are you kidding me?
Yes.
He was. He doesn't have as much story as the other two, but I did like the fight. I do like just the general situation, like basically if you fall into this pit of water, there's no floating, like you just keep sinking.
Yeah, and that's the funny thing is this game always has some, like, if it's not nanomachines, it's some other hokey ass explanation. Like, I don't even remember the explanation they give for
bacteria.
That water.
It's like bacteria or something,
it's
isn't
like,
it?
if you go down, you're not coming back up. It's like, okay, all right, guys. But yeah, that vamp fight is the one that I was alluding to earlier about the lights. They can, if left untouched, he can use them to freeze you in your tracks and just approach you and slash you. So shoot out the lights and you're totally fine. He can't do that to you. He can still spin around and throw knives at you like it's nobody's business. I can't think of a good joke. But yeah, he's a fun boss.
And he's definitely got. I would say Fortune's introduction is better, but his is almost there. His introduction. And of course, as we prefaced earlier, this is where you meet Mr. Pliskin, Iroquois.
Oh,
Pliskin,
his initial introduction, yeah.
Who, resembles
totally not Snake. Snake died on that tanker 2 years ago. And
it's a clever little reference by Kojima, because obviously, Solid Snake had always been modeled after Patrick Swayze as Snake Plissken in what was that old 80s movie?
First of all, that was Kurt Russell.
Or Kurt Russell, I don't remember. I thought it was Patrick Swayze.
No, it's not Patrick Swayze.
Actually, originally, like back in the original Metal Gear 2, it was more modeled after Michael Biehn from Terminator and Aliens.
Well, I know his face in Metal Gear Solid 1 was supposed to resemble that of Christopher Walken. That obviously evolved over time, and yes, Kojima being the movie buff that he is, Iroquois Pliskin came from or I think the name Snake even initially came from the character Snake Plissken. Now,
Yeah, Snake Plissken.
Iroquois Plissken being a secondary reference to the same character. Because Kojima loves movies.
Patrick Swayze.
Patrick Swayze. Yep, Patrick Swayze,
Getting some dirty dancing in there. But yeah, this guy who is pretending to be a Navy SEAL is obviously Snake. It's not really like,
dude.
You would have to be a moron to actually believe it was Snake.
What are you talking about? Snake died on that tanker 2 years ago.
Well, all I know is he's not a Navy man.
How many
Those who dare, that's British Special Air Services.
How many more times are we going to use the same jokes in this episode? But anyway, now we're going to move on. We've kind of talked about Dead Cell quite a bit. We've talked about Iroquois Plissken, who's totally not Snake, because Snake died on that tanker 2 years ago. Let's talk a bit about something you alluded to earlier when we were talking about Rosemary, Raiden's past. Yeah.
Yeah, so we really don't know anything about him going in. He's originally called Snake, and then they changed his code name.
Yeah, because he's not Snake. Snake died on that tanker 2 years ago.
Yeah, so over the course of the game, we find out he does have a bit of a past with, the assistant analyst Rosemary, as we find out through the save screens and the little conversations they have if you don't go through them. And as the game goes on, you meet Solidus, who implies a connection with Raiden. And eventually we find out Raiden has a bit of a dark past. He was a child soldier, with a nickname, Jack the Ripper. That might explain why he can't sleep at night and has nightmares and gets violent with his girlfriend.
That might do it.
Yeah.
and this is a good segue into Solidus, who is his adoptive father. Adoptive. Can you really call him adoptive?
He just raised him.
Yeah. And Solidus,
to be a killer.
If you're wondering why his name is Solidus, he is the brother of, quote unquote, brother of Snake and Liquid Snake. He is the third clone of the original Big Boss. And he's the leader of what he calls the Sons of Liberty, comprised of Dead Cell. Obviously, we fight them throughout, and obviously this is where the game gets its subtitle, Sons of Liberty, and in addition to other places that we'll get to in a bit. But also, the soldiers you're fighting throughout, who he has hired, members of the Gurlukovich private army, which originally was run by Olga, who we met in the Tanker Captain.
He was
her father, yeah. Sergei. Was it Sergei?
Sergei.
He dies. He's killed by Ocelot, along with a Marine colonel. God, I can't remember the last name.
Dolph.
Was it Dolph?
Are you thinking of Marine Colonel Scott Dolph?
Oh, okay. Well, it turns out that that's Fortune's father, and it's one of the big character reveals she has is that her sorrow over that death. And now, anyway, getting back to the Russian private army, now it is run by Olga. So we see Olga again working for Solidus, as well as Ocelot, who is also working for Solidus. So yeah, everybody works for Solidus. Or are they?
Or do they?
Because
I feel like there's so many. Here's the problem that I had with writing notes for this episode was there's so many different bits that we have to talk about, but they all tie into one another. It's like crossing threads on a cork board.
Like we already talked about Fat Man, but one of the big things that foreshadows everything when you're fighting Fat Man, or at least at the end, well, the beginning and the end, the opening cinematic and the ending cinematic, he has no idea about any ransom. And he wants nothing to do with them. All he wants to do is make a big explosion and kill his mentor to prove that he is the best and to put his name in the history books. He has no idea what Solidus's actual plan is, much less Ocelot. Ocelot is always straddling the line, and there are just weird sections of the game. Obviously, we said that your mission is to save the president, and at one point you do finally get to the president, and the president reveals to you that he was also somehow involved in this. He was cooperating with Solidus because he was trying to take on a big, bad, secret, supranational organization called the Patriots, aka Supra, aka aka Beyond Nations, called the Patriots, who secretly run everything, including the White House. He was trying to hold them ransom, or not hold them ransom, but hold ransom a super secret weapon they were developing to try to broker a deal and get a seat with the Patriots. By cooperating with Solidus, he thought he could do this. And that's how you learn who the Delaila Lugo is, or who they're referring to, at least. You don't really find out who they are. And then the president is shot by Ocelot, and Ocelot just kind of looks at you and then walks away. You would think if he was working for Solidus and they were the bad guys, he might kill you or at least take you prisoner.
Well, another reason for that is really just to once again play into that simulation of Shadow Moses, where a lot of key figures seemingly just died for no apparent reason, and
right.
And that's and he was supposed to die, but Raiden wasn't killing him and he wasn't dying, so Ocelot took matters into his own hands.
And again, going back to the simulation in Metal Gear Solid 1, there's a fight with a plane. In this one, you fight a Harrier jet, while Solid Snake just keeps throwing you fucking Stinger missiles out of helicopters. Here you go, kid.
Right, use this.
That's actually a fun fight. That's one of my favorite parts of the game.
I'm not the biggest fan of that fight.
But I love the cinematic afterwards where Solidus, because this is the introduction of Solidus, is that Harrier fight where Solidus jumps out and flexes and suddenly like his arms it's really weird.
He
flexes his muscles and all of a sudden they like pop out and he goes all Arnold Schwarzenegger for no reason because he's about to jump into a Harrier jet to fight you.
Pretty much.
But it's a fun fight, but it very heavily parallels the same fight. I mean,
against the Hind D, the helicopter.
And it has the same, I said you fight a jet, you fight a Hind D in Metal Gear Solid 1, sorry.
A Hind D.
A Kasatka. It must be the civilian model. But it even has the same result as in the other game where it cuts off a main route to where you're trying to get to, so you got to go around.
Oh, yeah, by the way, I want to touch on that real fucking fast. How many times did you guys die?
Three times.
3 times?
Yeah. One of them, because I didn't realize that there were also ciphers in the area. I forgot about that. So I was just like literally just running past guards, and all of a sudden there's a cipher that popped out of nowhere. And
see, while you're just on that pipe walking, you can do a cartwheel over to the left to get to an AK suppressor. So I kept wanting to do that. I kept failing that jump. Because of all the things Metal Gear Solid 2 is, it's not a platformer.
Yeah.
It's not very good at platforming.
But then it makes you platform in a way.
Yeah, exactly. Ugh, God.
I didn't even find that to be the most frustrating part of the game, but we'll get to that.
Oh, okay. I'm
some salt
about this. So yeah, Solidus and the president introduces you to the Patriots. So we really start to get this picture painted, especially in that part on top of Arsenal, where who the hell?
And Arsenal. We should explain what Arsenal is. Arsenal is the secret weapon that I was referring to that the president was holding hostage. Basically, you find out that this whole platform you've been fighting over is a cover-up for the development of a giant Metal Gear that houses a bunch of other Metal Gears and a bunch of missiles, and it's called Arsenal Gear. It's also the home of an AI.
It's like a Metal Gear battleship that just has
Basically,
other Metal
yes.
Gears. I guess a Metal Gear Cruiser or something. Yeah, whatever. You know what I mean. But you really start to get this picture painted of Solidus wants to take down the Patriots. Ocelot is somewhat working for the Patriots, and Olga is her child is held captive by the Patriots, and she needs Raiden to complete his mission so that her child will be saved. And Raiden's being manipulated by the Patriots to take down Solidus, who opposes them.
And that's another thing we haven't really talked about too much is Olga. While when we see actually Olga, she's working for Solidus. We find out eventually she is the ninja that is popping in and out. Obviously, there was also a cyber ninja in Metal Gear Solid 1. Again, the parallels.
A cyber ninja?
Cyborg?
Okay. You said cyber.
Sorry.
That's cool.
I was thinking.
I don't care.
Whatever. It doesn't matter. Basically, she.
You say a word wrong, I make fun of you. That's basically all it is.
She could deflect bullets with her sword. It's all good. And she has a Russian accent in a kind of, what's the word, altered voice, which you should pick up on the Russian accent, and it's kind of obvious, but modulator, yeah.
She initially goes by Deep Throat, which is what the cyborg ninja went by initially in MGS1, and then once Raiden picks up on that connection, which, another hint, hint, wink, wink, but once he picks up on that, she's immediately like, oh, call me Mr. X.
Yeah.
So we're supposed to keep that in mind, I guess, until you find out the truth.
And then you learn about the GWAI that the Patriots need to take control of society.
Which is when,
yeah,
things really start to get convoluted and crazy. And Delaila, I know you've been saying that this game, it's really confusing. Just because I get it now, and just because Jason gets it, when I first played it, and I played this game late for the first time. I played this game for the first time, I want to say, in 2012.
Oh, okay.
I played it when it came out. Yeah.
Yeah.
See,
for the first time.
I was like, 2001. I was 8. Yeah. I would not have understood any of this shit. I hardly understood it as a teenager.
Basically, once you sit down and think about it, and you get it, this is gaming's 1984, and quite scarily, it actually predicts a lot of like shit in the real world. Like, I mean, just the theme, meme, information control, like what is real, what's fake, like things that are pretty relevant and topical, not to get into too much outside discussion today, but regardless, like.
Yeah.
I think I played this when I was like maybe 13 for the first time, and I was looking at it just as like it's a freaking movie basically. And then like the new mechanics they added was really cool. I didn't really pay attention too much to the nitty-gritty of it, but even playing it at 32 years old, it's still very fucking confusing. Especially if you haven't played the other ones as an adult as well, which is the situation that I'm in now. So yeah, it's like Kingdom Hearts, but not as bad.
It's not nearly as bad as Kingdom Hearts.
No, it's not.
At least you don't have 4 different characters with the same fucking
All right,
name.
We're not getting into Jason's Kingdom Hearts rant.
But
damn it, Delilah, you're trying to get him going.
I know.
But as soon as you find out what's going on with the Patriots, you start to question what is Solidus's true aims. Well, it turns out his true aims is actually to remove the Patriots' control over New York City, which very well might cause an economic meltdown. But is that necessarily a morally wrong thing? Because he wants to try to create a political haven free of this secret organization controlling everything. And
his intentions are definitely good.
Yeah, and then you learn about how what we thought stood for Solid Snake Simulation Action actually stands for Selection for Societal Sanity.
And you're told
Which,
this by the crazy
yeah,
glitching out kernel
yes,
due to
that's the other thing.
yeah, we didn't really go into this much. So Emma Emmerich is on the plant, which is Hal's Otacon's sister. Which, wow, what a coincidence. It's not a coincidence. So
E. It also turns out that his sister is the one who tipped Snake and Otacon off to the Metal Gear Ray being on the tanker to begin with.
Yeah.
In the game. So basically, the Patriots have been setting this all in motion from the beginning, including with Solid Snake.
But she gives Raiden a little bit of information on the Patriots, including how the start of how they were able to really take control of the digital age. What was Y2K?
Y2K,
which is just so crazy that I'm kind of surprised that the game, when the game came out and that was a plot point, it didn't make like a big like media stink.
Mm.
You know, in this video game, it portrays that Y2K also distributed this other program where the government's watching you and stuff. It's basically what this is, which is really, really fucking terrifying.
Like I just said before, this game is gaming's 1984.
Yeah.
It predicted so much shit.
So she gives a little more insight into the Patriots and promptly gets murdered by Vamp.
And
pretty soon
Otacon cries, and her parakeet or parrot or whatever it is says some stuff.
I miss you.
Yes.
E. Oh. Yeah.
But then there is an awesome shot where Raiden Snake.
Oh, you're talking about the shot where they walk towards the camera and he's got the bird. Yeah, that shot is so epic for no reason.
You got to laugh at the same time because Otacon is leading like these two super soldiers. And he's just this former anime otaku with a parrot on his arm, crying.
Not only that, but I love the secret handshake between Snake and Otacon, and then they hug each other after. I'm just like, yo,
bros for life.
The biggest group of bros right there.
Even though Snake is always cock blocking Otacon in every game, he literally kills.
Yeah, that's true.
Or indirectly causes the death of like everybody Otacon gets into.
Yeah, that's true. But anyway.
So the part of this game that was the most annoying to me was when you have to snipe all of the enemies while Emma goes across the platforms.
Yes.
And you have to constantly use the what's that item? The
pentazamine.
Yeah.
Sniping is frustrating in this game because it tried to be realistically like your reticle will shake everywhere, but it's a little over the top. So there is an item that you have to acquire. You don't acquire, you can pick it up. It's like a consumable that calms you down and makes it a little easier.
I feel like the only reason it's really frustrating, I totally agree with you, Delaila. It's one of the weaker part of the games, and it's very frustrating to do. The most frustrating part about it is that the whole shake thing only happens with the sniper rifle.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen with like the Stinger launcher, even just like a handgun. And you know, a sniper rifle, it's a longer gun, it's heavier. I get it, but not to the extent that the game portrays.
If the item lasted a lot longer, I would have been fine with it. It really takes a really short time to run out, and you have to keep using them. And then it's not like you're only sniping a few enemies, like you have constantly respawning drones or whatever they're called. Things in the sky. Ciphers, yeah. And so you have to make sure you're shooting those because they will kill Emma, and if you die you have to start all over because she has to pass through 3 platforms. So that was like Dark Souls level shit right there for me.
Oh god. Yeah,
I remember back in the day failing a lot at that particular junction.
Just they don't, especially when you get on harder difficulties. I speedran the game on hard, got to that point, and when you go on higher difficulties, they start limiting how much you can carry of any given thing. So I think on normal you could carry up to 10 pentazamine.
Oh.
Hard was 5.
Mm,
Yeah.
You go through that pretty fast in that section.
Yeah. But they drop a few, I think. Like there's some in the area that you can pick up.
I managed to luck out and had that 5 last me until the very end, so I didn't notice.
Oh, okay.
But I'm gonna play through on extreme at some point, so we'll see how it goes then.
It was frustrating, but I was glad in a way because I felt like there were so many items in this game and I didn't really use all of them. So that and the whole Fat Man part of the game is where I use the most items.
Okay. Yeah, and something to bring up real quick. Don't have to linger on this for too long, but pretty much every item you get in the game is like useful for more than just its like initial purpose. Like the big example I can think of is the coolant spray.
right.
The coolant spray was useful even past the bomb defusal. That's why they never get rid of it from your inventory.
Mm-hmm.
You can like not distract. You can like it freaks out enemies. You can spray guards with it. Can you spray to detect lasers with it? I never tried.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Um, I think you have to spray the box that activates the lasers. I don't know. I forgot.
You can definitely shoot fire extinguishers to find
To do that, yeah.
And yeah, if you put a guard to sleep, you can spray their face with coolant spray to wake them up.
Can you? I never did that.
Yeah.
I just kept kicking them.
Now, if you want
Or
to
pick
wake
'em
up,
up.
if you want to wake up a guard, you can use the coolant spray and spray it on them, and it'll wake them up over time. You have to use it to move bugs away.
Oh yeah.
Everything in the game does have a use more than its like initial purpose, and I really appreciate that.
It's just masterful tight game design.
Mm-hmm.
And I've ranted a few times on this show before about how sick I'm getting of open world games, and it's games like this that reinforce that belief I have that game design is just lacking in the modern day in that regard. Just even a much smaller area can contain so much more if designed properly.
Yeah, and speaking of looking at the map of Big Shell, it's like it's amazing to think how the longevity you got out of such a simple map.
Yeah, it's very much Metroidvania in style to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
So Emma gets killed, and you meet back up with Snake, Otacon. Otacon has his last goodbye and everything, and that's when we really start to get this one of the themes that I mentioned at the top of the show, betrayal, where Cyborg Ninja shows up. Snake's like, yeah, I never said I was on your side. And they knock out Raiden, use him to get onto Arsenal. And Raiden gets tortured, naked. You find out, oh, my adoptive dad's here.
Yeah, it's similar to the situation that happens to you in MGS1. I mean, not the betrayal, but the whole torture sequence.
Mm-hmm. That's like
At that point, does he find out who killed his parents? Or was that later on?
I think that's at the very end.
Okay, all right.
Yeah. But that's when Solidus goes into his backstory of being a child soldier, and you find all that out. We get another conversation with Rosemary talking about it, and Olga sets him free, and you do the little sneaky in the nude.
Yeah.
Running around covering your private parts, and that's when things start to get a little crazy.
Right.
Which is one of my favorite parts of the game, just because of the memes, ironic, that come out of it. I need scissors, 61, and all that crazy stuff.
When you go on your codec, the kernel, quote unquote, starts freak twitching out, saying crazy fourth wall breaking shit.
He starts naming off like Japanese districts. He starts telling you like, "Oh, you have to save Meryl." He says
tells you to turn the game console off.
Yes,
you've been playing too long.
Which
is bad for you.
We can talk about real quick because most of these bits happen right at this section of the game. Is the amount of times this game just decides, all right, we're gonna fucking break the fourth wall. Turn off the
At this
game
point,
console now. You've been playing too long.
At this point, if you die, it still says fission mailed, right?
Yeah.
Not instead of mission failed.
I don't know if it does it quite at this point. It does it right
Or is
after.
it later
for sure.
after?
Yeah,
after
yeah,
It
yeah,
you
it-
get shit
happens
from
once
Snake?
you start fighting with the sword.
Yes.
Okay.
I think.
Yes. So, yeah, sneaking around Arsenal. Colonel's going off the fritz, and that would be because he was an AI all along. The calls are coming from inside the walls.
Right. Basically, it's subtly or not so subtly, depending how you look at it, revealed to you that you've basically been working for the Patriots all along. Colonel Campbell is part of the GW AI. And
the
like
Colonel is part of the GW.
the Colonel, yeah. And his face kind of hollows out, and you can see this skull. Although when you keep talking to Rosemary on the codec, I was always confused by that because it doesn't seem like she's not necessarily saying she's part of the AI, but she's talking very similarly as the Colonel.
I think that because I was a little confused by that playing through the game again too, and I think what they were trying to accomplish was Rosemary's whole bit was that her job was to basically spy on Raiden, become close to him, be whoever he wanted her to be,
and then she fell in love with him.
But I think the whole idea is blending reality with fantasy is to make us question, like, is that the real Rosemary, or is that conversation the real Rosemary? What's real, what's fake? It's another one of those moments where we're starting to question what's actually happening, especially with her.
Right.
You get into that one. Oh, another thing that I noticed, because when you pause while in Arsenal, you get that weird image for a map, which is this completely off the wall reference to like Ouroboros and the World Turtle and something else.
Yeah, like old myths. Like each area has the name of a different inside part of an animal. Like there's literally, I believe there was a part of the ship called the rectum. Like
there's a part that's the ascending colon, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But one thing I noticed was when you run out into the main part of Arsenal that you sneak around in the room that you start in, there's actually medicine that you can grab, because walking around in this cold area completely buck-ass naked, Raiden can catch a cold. He can start sneezing, and that'll alert guards, but there's medicine you can grab to get rid of that.
Again, pointing the amount of detail that went into this game.
Yeah. So I ran back in there to get it, and as I came back out to the main part, the you know how the name of the area pops up on the screen, I noticed it changed to Azabu Juban, which is a subway stop in Tokyo.
Oh.
Really?
Yes. It's actually where my satellite college that I studied abroad in is located. It's like right there.
Wow.
Which I thought I took a screenshot of it. I thought it was so bizarre and hilarious. I never
Maybe the
noticed
game read your passport and just knew.
Yeah, they have access to everything. The Patriots. But yeah, once you get past that part, you run up and down this hallway for a while. Your Soliton radar starts showing a girl napping in a chair. Everything goes just totally off the walls. Snake shows up, gives you your shit, and gives you a fucking sword.
And when you ask about, the ammo situation, Snake's like, "Don't worry, I got it." And he like winks at you, "Infinite ammo."
Yeah, that's the last. No, I guess not the last, but the big fourth wall breaking moment that I wanted to bring up, because I think it's so tongue in cheek funny. Also, another thing that I think is kind of funny. At least I don't remember if you can get it on normal. I didn't find it, but definitely on hard and on extreme, in the dock that you start in, you can find a shaver. And during the part where you meet with Pliskin for the first time, if you have the shaver, Raiden gives it to him. And at that part where Snake shows up in Arsenal gear, if he if you gave him the shaver, when he shows back up, his face is clean shaven.
Really?
Wow.
Yes, that's
great.
That's an Easter egg that's in the game, which I think is really funny.
I didn't know
The-
that.
And of course, the infinite ammo. Of course, apart from it being just a tongue-in-cheek reference to like video game cheats, and obviously we're way past simply breaking the fourth wall. It's also a reference to in Metal Gear Solid 1, you could play through the game, and I don't remember if it was just a reward for a normal playthrough, and you could just use it on secondary, or if you had to beat it on like hard mode or something.
It might have
But
been for
there
a
was,
speed run under a certain time or something.
yeah, but there was a way to get an infinite ammo unlockable in MGS1.
It really plays, and it really helps to play into the whole idea that we want to look at. We're looking at Snake now through different eyes, and they really want him to look like a badass. He's this veteran soldier, and that's how we're supposed to see him. So him having this fucking bandana that gives him infinite ammo.
Which is basically with the way the player sees him is the way Ryan's supposed to see him, and that goes back to the very beginning. We're talking about the node where you put in your name. You're supposed to put in the player's name in the node.
Did you just say nerd?
I said node.
So
You're asking for it, Mark.
So you go into that next section. This is the last fourth wall breaking moment that Delaila mentioned, when you start fighting dudes. Dudes are Tengu soldiers just start showing up, swords, guns, what have you. You're just slaying them, and then suddenly you get the mission failed screen.
Except it says
Proficient meld.
And you're still able to play in that tiny little screen just the wacky shit they start throwing. And the whole idea is that the Emma had this worm cluster that was supposed to act like Fox Die in the grand scheme of things, and that was fucking up the AI. By that time it starts kicking in and everything starts going off the fritz.
Mm-hmm.
Because as we've learned by this point, the actual people who were the Patriots are dead, and they're now
No, we haven't learned that by this point.
So the very end.
I thought the Colonel already said it over the codec, and he said we are more of an AI. Oh, man.
That's not until you fight after you fight the last boss, I think.
Jason, you're spoiling in the spoiler cast.
God damn it.
We're not even there yet, man. So, yeah, go fight dudes. Then we get to that big encounter we were talking about earlier. We're jumping all around. This is such a complicated game to cover.
Right.
Thanks for sticking with us, everyone. But, yeah, then you get triple crossers and double crossers. You find out the reason nothing can hit Fortune is because Patriots gave her this thing that makes bullets just not hit her, and it gets deactivated and she gets killed. Olga's helping you because her child is being held captive, and Raiden can't die because if Raiden dies, her child dies. So Raiden needs to live, but he knows that killing Solidus means the Patriots win, and
he's basically got a no-win situation. He either denies the Patriots, Olga's kid dies, and he helps Solidus, quote-unquote, free New York City from the control of the Patriots, which in turn may or may not cause global economic catastrophe, or he helps the Patriots and they continue their, I don't know,
reign over the United States.
Evil reign, which is represented by this AI and the Selection for Societal Sanity, which is basically mass censorship and control over people through control of information, which goes back to the theme of meme.
Yes, and I wanted to read the definition of meme that I threw in here, which is an element of a culture this is the actual definition of a meme. It's not a funny picture that you find on Reddit.
Although that does somewhat fit into the real definition.
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, the real definition, which is an element of a culture or system of behavior that may be considered to be passed from one individual to another by non-genetic means, especially imitation. So that like the memes are called memes because that's what they are. That's what they do. It's an
Yeah,
element of
the
a culture.
I believe the phrase wasn't it actually invented by like it was one of the four horsemen of like atheists. What was his name? Wasn't it wasn't the one guy who's dead.
I
I don't
don't
remember his name. Anyway,
I don't know Dr.
he
Kwasnicki,
wrote a famous
PhD.
he wrote a famous book about memes and how it would affect the future. Anyway, uh,
So
totally off the rails. Let's get back to the game.
yeah. So yeah, selection for societal sanity. Really, what that was trying to accomplish was that they could was so that the Patriots. It was to prove that the Patriots could control somebody without them knowing. Which is basically what they did to Raiden. Raiden was completely none the wiser, had no idea, and just carried out orders because he was told to carry out orders. Didn't question them. Didn't wonder, what's actually going on. He just did it, and that doubles into they tell him to kill Solidus, and that coupled with him knowing that he's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. As far as Solidus goes, if he doesn't kill him and Solidus kills Raiden, then Olga's child dies. He doesn't want that to happen. That's blood on his hands. So, your final boss.
Yeah, and let's be completely frank here. If I was Raiden, I would have chose to fight Solidus just because it's aesthetically probably the coolest boss fight
Yeah.
in that game. If not, I won't say the entire series because that's not true. But
Yes, you fight, and also we kind of glossed over this, but Solidus was the former president of the United States.
oh my God, yes,
We
forgot
kind of
to mention-
neglected to mention. Yes, he was.
We forgot to-
He was the
he-
George Sears that was mentioned in Metal Gear Solid 1. He was the former president of the United States that spoke to Ocelot on the phone in the post-credit scene of Metal Gear Solid 1.
and he was forced to resign by the Patriots as a result of the events of Metal Gear Solid 1.
Yes, he is the former president of the United States, and you fight the former president of the United States on top of Federal Hall, with katanas.
You're basically on the wreckage of Metal Gear Arsenal, which has crashed into New York City, and you're just fucking dueling it out with swords. And we also forgot to mention that Solidus is like got a Doc Ock suit in addition to his muscle suit.
Yeah, he's got those two arms. And he's got swords. He had P90s, dual P90s that could somehow cause things to explode. But anyway, yeah, you have a big sword fight. That was a fun final boss.
Yeah, I love that boss.
It's good stuff.
Second best fight.
It's second. I think it's in terms of final bosses. It's second only to the end of Metal Gear Solid 3.
And you'll leave it at that.
Yep, exactly. No, I would never spoil the ending of that game. It's perhaps one of the best endings of all time in gaming.
So, Delilah, second to which fight for you?
Fat Man.
Okay. Just curious. A fun fact, real quick. I remember my embarrassing story about my controller in the Uncharted episode that I told, where I bit the controller out of rage.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that controller went through some more battle damage as a result of this game.
You have issues,
Really?
man.
For what fight? Was it the very last fight?
That fight, but on extreme.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see that.
With how hard it is to get rations, I was, and you get hit, you start bleeding, and if you don't have rations to fix it, you're kind of hosed. So I broke the handle on that same controller.
Oh my god.
by throwing it at the floor. I'm much better now. This was
I would hope so.
This was a long time ago, but holy
You might
shit.
want to go see a therapist.
But
I'm no expert. but something says to me that breaking your controller's handle
Hey man,
is not healthy.
always gotta have a good gamer rage story. Um, so yeah, pretty good final boss. I enjoyed it, and then we go into the whole ending sequence. Ocelot, there's this whole melodramatic scene. Ocelot falls, looks up with his arm, and then dies. And Raiden goes
You mean
down to the street.
Solidus?
Who did I say?
Ocelot.
God damn it, Solidus. Yes.
You literally just spoiled the ending of another game.
No, I didn't. I
Yeah,
mean,
you did.
I wouldn't have if you hadn't said anything. No, I didn't. I didn't spoil anything.
Actually, that's not how he dies in that game. But
No, shut up, Jason. um, something else we forgot to mention was like the final betrayal before Arsenal crashes is Ocelot gets taken over by Liquid again, and we find out
hello, brother.
Ocelot was, working for the Patriots or whatever, and Liquid wants to destroy the Patriots. Of course he does. So he takes Ray and leaves.
Which we never even find out how Liquid knew about the Patriots up until this point.
Because he was in Ocelot's brain. And Ocelot knows about them, so therefore Liquid knows about them.
But why would Liquid want to destroy the Patriots, though?
Because they're bad. I don't know.
Whatever.
Is that really what you want to question here?
I just wish Liquid had never been in the rest of the series after one. But anyway.
So yeah, Raiden's down on the street, and there's like no one on the street, and then suddenly everyone's out on the street. It's kind of a weird sequence.
Well, it's very much part of the theme of societal control, I think. Just the fact that everybody seems to be going about their normal day lives, as there's just like a fucking giant wreckage behind them.
Yeah, and there's two weird dudes in tights.
Yeah.
In the middle of the street. We go through this whole thing, and this is where the name comes in, where Raiden has these dog tags with whatever name you gave him, and Snake's like, "What's that?" He's like, "Oh, nothing." He's like, "Carve your own name for yourself," and Raiden throws them away. That's
whatever name you put into the node. Yeah, whatever name you put into the node will show up on those dog tags.
Yeah, because it's supposed to be like you're supposed to project yourself onto Raiden at first until Raiden becomes his own character. And then it's like, okay, Raiden's going to be his own character now.
It's basically the idea of these soldiers freeing themselves from your expectations, etc., which was obviously something that would become very controversial and would cause many of the fan base to hate the game. Although I think they hated it more because they didn't get to play as Snake the entire time.
Yeah.
Until years later, when the people actually started to understand, and now it's like, it's not. I wouldn't even say a cult hit. It's like so many of the fans will say it's one of their favorites of the series, if not like their second, maybe even their first favorite.
Their first favorite, which is to say their favorite.
Yeah.
During that ending, and Delaila, there's a trophy for it, so I'm sure you know. During that whole sequence about the dog tags, there's a part where the camera pans, and if you look far in the back, you can see Vamp alive and well, watching you. And yeah, then the game ends. There's nothing important left to talk about with it. Nothing at all. There's no post credits conversation whatsoever with a big revelation.
Oh, wait a minute. I when I was doing this play, no, it's weird because when I was doing this play through, I didn't stay through the post credits. I just kind of got up and did my thing, and when I got back, it was already back to the menu.
Oh, geez.
But I always remember there being another Ocelot, because Ocelot always has a fucking phone conversation with the president.
So I
mean, granted, the president's dead in this game, but
the post credits scene in this one is Snake and Otacon talking, where Otacon finds the names of the Patriots, the 12 names of the people, and they've been dead for 100 years.
Right.
And also one of them is supposedly one of Philanthropy's biggest contributors. That's where that revelation comes in at the very end, Jason.
Yeah.
I see. Maybe it's just because I've always remembered that being the big revelation, and I thought it had come earlier in the game. I'm so confused.
Yeah.
I'm getting too old for this shit. I drank so much beer this past weekend
Ooh, was it good beer?
because there's just a lot of Yingling.
Oh, come on, man. You're killing me.
Dude, I needed something cheap.
Yingling? All right.
I usually like if I'm gonna drink something to enjoy it, to savor it, it would be something much darker. But
I mean, Yingling's a Philly staple. I can't completely knock you. But, yeah, that's Metal Gear Solid 2. We did it.
Lots of shit going on, lots of different themes that are present in different characters in different situations. It's all too much. It's overwhelming.
Hopefully, if you played this game for the first time and now you're listening to this frenetic and all over the place episode, you have at least somewhat of a better understanding of what.
oh,
The hell you
by
just
the
went
way,
through?
before we close this out completely, Rosemary is pregnant.
Oh yeah, Rosemary's pregnant. She says
That's like
that
the last.
while
That's like the last thing she says to you.
she says that while all the stuff, or she alludes to it while all the stuff's going haywire, and you find out that yeah, she's indeed pregnant, and they do, and Raiden and her do meet in the streets and decide, yeah, we need to work on who we actually are and discover who we actually are. So they get a happy ending, which is it's good.
Yeah.
You know, it's all right.
The one good thing it does set up for, I think Raiden is the one piece of, not one piece. There's a lot, but
One Piece is an anime. We're not.
no, you didn't let me finish. Fucking let me finish speaking, Mark. Okay. Fucking asshole. All I was gonna say was, if there was one thing that I don't think I can really criticize that much, if at all, of the later, chronologically speaking, story of the game, it's Raiden. I think they did a pretty good job with that, if anything.
And we'll leave it at that.
And we'll leave it at that.
One last thing. Usually I pose a question to you guys. I chose not to do that with this episode because I couldn't think of an interesting enough question.
I have a question. I'm
Oh.
not sure if it's interesting though.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Let's go for it.
Delilah's
Well,
mixing it up.
How would you feel if they remade this game to the capacity that they remade a game, the like Resident Evil 2?
I don't think so, because they would have to take away fixed camera, and that completely changes this game.
Mm-hmm.
If there's a game that more desperately needs a remake, it's Metal Gear,
Yes.
the original.
So people have a better understanding of the entire lore of the saga in its entirety.
And that's where I'd want that's where I'd want like a full blown like Resident Evil 2 treatment, remake this game from the ground up.
Okay.
This game I really feel still holds up extraordinarily well.
Yes, the character models
Even
look great. Yeah.
Something we didn't really even talk about is the art style of this game. It's not cell shaded. But it's very colorful, it's very vibrant, and it's very smooth, and it makes it so it's pretty timeless. It
Right.
doesn't feel
It looks in many ways almost like a Nintendo game
it
of
just
the time period.
sure. Like it feels it doesn't feel dated. It doesn't feel like it's aged poorly. It's not like Metal Gear Solid 1 and most games, unfortunately, on the PlayStation 1, where they were built with these very poorly textured polygons, all in the effort of getting to 3D, which it did spectacularly, but that stuff doesn't hold up really that well. But this
It also
really
helps
does.
It also helps that, unlike Metal Gear Solid 3, which takes place in the jungle, so there's a lot of tiny little textures, details, grass, leaves, weird mixtures of textures, moss. This is mostly flat surfaces. You're mostly indoors.
It's
And when you're
industrial,
outdoors, yeah, it's industrial. That's the word I'm looking for. So I would say, with the exception of like character models and cinematics, in many ways it holds up better than 3.
Yeah. I think I'd agree. Yeah. Um, that was an interesting question.
Oh, good.
Uh, man, I want a remake of Metal Gear. It'll actually get me to play through it.
Or we can just get like an actual Raiden, a continuation of Raiden
Yeah.
spin-off.
Well, you know, I'd love that, but here's the thing. This is an answer to Delilah's question. This is an answer to anything we could talk about the future of Metal Gear. I don't trust Konami to do anything meaningful with it.
I don't think there is a future of Metal Gear, and it makes me sad.
Same.
I mean, granted, like, what can you do without really ruining anything further?
Yeah.
To be
This
honest,
does make me excited for the future of Death Stranding.
Yeah.
Because this, like, replaying this game really put into perspective what we're possibly getting ourselves into.
Yeah. Later this year, November 8th.
Yeah.
get ready to do some cartwheels with Norman Reedus. Imagine if that was in Death Stranding. You
I
could just
would
do
be
cartwheels
so happy.
with that big ass like astronaut setup you got going on, and
You
you're
have to
just
do
doing
it with the baby
cartwheels.
in your hand, though.
Yeah. Imagine if like we're just gonna be using the baby as a weapon. You hit people with it.
Oh my god.
Maybe the baby is the main character and it's not Norman Reedus.
That's a funny thing maybe we could talk about, like with the bait and switch that happened with this, and with how little we've seen of Death Stranding. I wonder if we will get some sort of bait and switch with that game too.
Yeah.
It remains to be seen.
Yeah.
But yeah, one thing we didn't really talk about much. Well, we talked about it a little bit, sprinkled throughout. There are lots of Easter eggs in this game. Just like a note to end on.
I completely forgot Johnny was in this one.
Yeah, that's the big one that I want to talk about. You know, we have the seagulls pooping, and you can slip on it. You got the posters of women everywhere, and
You got nudie mags you can throw out, and guards will look at them.
yeah, and you got the dog tags, the Vulcan Raven statue. The mission failed screen actually has statistics on your playthrough hidden on it, which is an interesting detail. But Johnny, there are 2 instances where you can listen in and find out that Johnny is there. Johnny being the guard in Metal Gear Solid 1 who had chronic diarrhea.
And he ends up in Metal Gear Solid 4 being a hero. I was just gonna say a hero, and honestly, my favorite character in that game besides Raiden.
Yeah.
I love Johnny.
He was pretty cool.
It was cool how they did like a funny little joke to pull the series together, like that.
Yeah. All right. Do we have any other final notes, or can we go to bed now?
Oh, I'm good. I have said all I have to say.
Delilah?
You can keep talking about this game and these game forever.
God, yeah. We're already over 2 hours. We could have easily talked
no
about this
way.
game for another 2 hours.
Oh my god.
But
No, I'm good. I'm good.
good?
Lots of confusing themes.
well, Delilah, if you really want to like come to a better understanding, you could listen to the latest episode of Reap the Spoils covering Metal Gear Solid 2. Yeah, so this was the Reap the Spoils episode for Metal Gear Solid 2: Sons of Liberty. The next episode we're doing. What game are we doing?
Spider-Man.
Dun, 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 Spider-Man, Spider-Man.
Thank you for that. Yes, next game we're covering is Marvel Spider-Man for PlayStation 4 that came out last year. So, go load up that.
I haven't
crusty
played
old
that
thing.
I haven't played that at all yet, so I'm excited.
Oh, you haven't?
No.
Oh. Well, that is exciting. Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Delilah, do you have anything you want to plug?
No. I'm
Okay.
Assassina-san everywhere. I stream. I do other podcasts, but those have been kind of slow.
Okay.
Not as consistent as these.
Okay.
And I'm never on it, but now you might know why my Twitter name is Solid Quaz,
Aww.
because I'm a Geary.
Stop it. No. Yeah. You can find Delilah at Assassina_san on Twitter. Is that underscore everywhere too?
No, sometimes it's just a dash.
All right. So if you want to find
Play
her
around
on a
with it.
social media, yeah, just like switch between. If you don't find her with the hyphen, try the underscore. You'll find her. Jason just doesn't talk, so don't follow him.
I don't talk because I'm too busy partying. Come join the party.
You can find me at Nibelheimian.
If anybody who's listening to this is wondering that's what Fat Man says to you, I'm just not saying that randomly.
I should hope that if they played the game, they would know that, Jason.
Because if they're listening to this out of context, that probably sounds really weird.
Yeah, you can find me at Nibelheimian, and we have a Facebook group. Join the Facebook group. Talk to us in the Facebook group. You listen to the show. Probably listen to the show on either YouTube or Apple, Spotify, and Google. If you like the show, please rate, review, give us a good rating. Tell us why you like the show. If you do, give us nice comments. We like nice comments. We'll respond to you. And that's it. I'm going to go to bed.
Yeah, me too. Sorry
I'm too
about the
tired.
sound issues also,
Oh,
which is
I'm
partially why I was so quiet, besides being very confused.
All right. Thanks for
Bye.
listening.
Night, everybody.
What if they listen to this in the morning, Jason? What if this is their commute?
You know what? I make exceptions for no one.